Welcome to a gripping new episode of Animal Quests. Today we're delving into some of the most chilling snake attacks ever documented. From a selfless man sacrificing himself to save a friend, to a determined researcher ignoring multiple warnings. But first, we begin with the haunting tale of Watiba. While tending to her garden, she came face to face with a massive python. What unfolded next was nothing short of horrifying. It was a quiet, humid evening in June 2018 on Muna Island, a small, tranquil land nestled off Sulawesi's southern coast. The air, thick with the scent of wet earth from the recent rains, was unusually cool for the time of year, a pleasant 68 degrees Fahrenheit after a sweltering day in the low 90s. The island, just over 650 square miles, was surrounded by turquoise waters and golden sandy beaches. Lush jungles, dense with undergrowth, hid freshwater lagoons and cascading waterfalls. But beneath their beauty, the jungles concealed a lurking danger, one that the island's inhabitants, like Watiba, would soon come to face, unseen and unforgiving. Watiba, a 54-year-old woman, had just finished her daily chores in the vegetable garden she tended to feed her family and sell at the local market. She had been struggling with wild boars that had been raiding her garden at night, destroying her crops. Her hard work was repeatedly ruined. Frustrated, she decided to take matters into her own hands. Tonight, she intended to drive them off for good. The walk to the garden, half a mile from the village, was one she knew well. It passed through thick undergrowth and rocky outcrops. Beyond the trees, the path curved toward a large cliff with caves on its rocky face, a known spot for snakes. Watiba had grown up in these surroundings and was familiar with the risks. As she walked, the night was still except for the occasional rustle of leaves. The jungle, normally full of life, felt oddly quiet tonight. She arrived at her garden and immediately saw the wild boars. They were rooting around, their snouts digging into the freshly planted vegetables. Without hesitation, Watiba shouted and clapped her hands. The boars squealed and bolted into the forest. Relieved, she moved closer to inspect the damage. The flashlight beam flickered across the overturned soil, showing signs of destruction. But as Watiba leaned in to assess the mess, something far more dangerous was closing in. A predator, attracted by the scent of the boars, had caught the trail and was moving swiftly toward her. Watiba didn't realize the danger until it was too late. A massive reticulated python, 23 feet long, suddenly struck. It lunged at Watiba, its fangs sinking into her back. The force of the strike sent her sprawling to the ground, the machete slipping from her grasp and falling with a clatter. Pain exploded across her body as she scrambled to get to her feet, but the python was faster. In one fluid motion, it coiled around her, its immense strength pinning her arms and legs. The pressure was suffocating. The python's body wrapped tighter with every movement she made. Watiba's vision blurred as she gasped for breath, her ribs unable to expand under the snake's constriction. The jungle, once alive with the sound of night, seemed eerily silent as she struggled in vain, her energy draining quickly. The crushing grip of the python left her helpless. She fought with every ounce of strength, but the snake's hold only tightened. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Watiba's body grew limp as the snake continued to constrict. Her heart raced before eventually slowing. The weight of the snake's body, combined with its unrelenting pressure, extinguished her life. In the darkness of the night, Watiba's struggles ceased. By morning, her family noticed she had not returned. They alerted the village and a search party of more than 100 people was formed. They retraced her steps, finding her flashlight and sandals near the garden, but no sign of her. The village grew desperate. Then a cry rang out. A villager had found something. A 23-foot reticulated python was struggling to move, its bloated body suggesting something inside it had been consumed. The search party killed the snake, severing its head before carefully carrying its enormous body back to the village. When the snake was laid out on the ground, a sharp knife was used to cut open its belly. What they found inside shocked them. Watiba's body, still intact and wearing the same clothes she had worn the night before, emerged from the python's gut. The village stood in stunned silence, some gasping in disbelief. The sight was too much to bear. Watiba had become the snake's prey. Her body was carefully laid out, and the villagers, shaken by the discovery, could only look on in horror. The event sent shockwaves through the community, and fear of the surrounding wilderness grew. The island had always been a place of peaceful isolation, but the encroachment of human activity on the natural world was beginning to cause increasingly dangerous encounters between people and wildlife. The balance had shifted, and the shadow of danger was now closer than ever. Watiba's funeral took place that same day, a somber event in which the village came together to mourn the loss of one of their own. Her children, still too young to fully grasp the enormity of what had happened, had to say their final goodbyes. When she left that evening to tend to her garden, no one could have predicted it would be the last time they would ever see her. The tragedy of Watiba's death was a grim reminder of the growing risks humans face as they encroach on the natural habitats of predators like the reticulated python. These large snakes, though typically not inclined to hunt humans, are opportunistic predators. As the forested areas of Sulawesi continue to be cleared for agriculture, these snakes are increasingly forced into contact with human settlements, and attacks like this have become more frequent. In the year before, another man had been killed by a reticulated python while working on a palm oil plantation in Sulawesi. The man's body was discovered inside the snake, much like Watiba's. Approximately 10,000 people lose their lives to snake bites each year, with another 400,000 left suffering permanent disabilities or life-altering injuries such as amputations. These numbers highlight the grave danger snakes pose, capable of leaving devastating consequences in their wake. In our next story, we turn to the notorious eastern brown snake, known to strike with incredible speed and venom potent enough to kill in minutes. Donald Morrison encountered this deadly predator while courageously protecting his friend, a selfless act that came with heartbreaking consequences. It was a warm, clear evening on September 9, 2023, at Kumala State School, a place filled with the sounds of laughter and familiar chatter of long-lost friends reconnecting. The occasion was special, the 100th anniversary of the school, and former students, now scattered far and wide, had gathered to celebrate the memories of their shared past. Donald Morrison, at 68, was among them, surrounded by the faces of those who had once shared the same classrooms and schoolyard. It had been 60 years since the days they roamed these grounds, but for a moment it felt like yesterday. The school, located just 37 miles south of Mackay on Queensland's north coast, lay nestled between sprawling brushland and vast cane farms. The rural town of Kumala had seen little change in the years since Donald had left, though he had never strayed far. It was his home, a place of comfort and nostalgia, where the air was thick with memories as well as the scent of sugarcane and salt from the nearby coast. This evening had been long anticipated, and the reunion felt like a gift. For Donald, it was more than just a chance to revisit the past. It was a celebration of the people and the place that had shaped him. As the evening wore on, Donald and his longtime friend Lloyd Younger stood together in conversation, catching up on life and their respective journeys. The air was cool and the setting sun cast long shadows over the lawn where the crowd had gathered. But as the last rays of sunlight faded, an unexpected danger stirred in the undergrowth. Lloyd, the friend of Donald, suddenly felt a sharp sensation on his ankle. At first, he thought it was an insect or a brush from a branch, but when the pressure intensified, he looked down. There, coiled around his leg, was a snake. Its scales shimmered with a beautiful brown-gray hue outlined in dark brown lines. The round, jet-black eyes of the eastern brown snake glinted as it gripped tightly onto his ankle. Donald's heart was shocked as he recognized the creature. The eastern brown snake, one of the deadliest in Australia, was notorious for its speed and venom. Donald wasted no time. He slowly bent down toward the snake, his movements deliberate and calculated. Lloyd was starting to panic, fully aware of the deadly potential of an eastern brown snake, but Donald's calm presence kept him from losing control. Positioning himself carefully, Donald brought his hands around toward the back of the snake, his body low to the ground. His fingers hovered just inches from the coiled reptile, each motion precise and cautious. The dim light of the evening cast long shadows, making it harder to judge the snake's position. With a moment of determination, Donald made his move. But the fading light played tricks on his perception, and the snake spotted his hand before he could act. In an instant, it struck with incredible speed, its head whipping around to sink its fangs into Donald's arm, leaving no time for him to react. The pain was immediate, sharp, and intense. A cry escaped Donald's lips, but despite the searing pain, he didn't let go of the snake. He gripped the long, muscular body, holding it at arm's length. The creature thrashed violently, striking at him again and again, its powerful jaw snapping dangerously close. Donald's body swerved as he avoided each strike, but the snake's accuracy was relentless. Then, just as Donald thought he had managed to distance himself from the threat, the snake caught him once more, this time on his chest. With a final, desperate effort, Donald hurled the snake into the undergrowth, away from the crowd. He paused, breathless, surveying the celebration continuing in the distance. The sound of voices and laughter filled the air, unaware of the danger that had just unfolded on the outskirts of the gathering. As he turned to rejoin the crowd, a strange weakness overtook him. His vision blurred and his legs gave way. He staggered toward Lloyd before collapsing in a heap at his feet. Panic rippled through those nearby as they rushed to his side, desperate to help him. But Donald's chest was already heavy with the weight of the venom spreading through his veins. His breath came in quick, shallow bursts, his body succumbing to the poison coursing through him. Despite the efforts of those around him, CPR, defibrillators, emergency services, the venom worked faster than any intervention. The paramedics worked tirelessly for 30 minutes, but the poison was too strong. Donald's heart gave out. He was gone before the helicopter could even arrive. Lloyd, still shaken and now fearing the worst, was quickly airlifted to McKay Base Hospital. He had received the same bite, but unlike Donald, he had been lucky. The snake, acting more defensively than aggressively, had delivered a dry bite, a rare but not unheard of occurrence. While the snake had left its marks, it had not injected venom into Lloyd, and he was soon treated and released the following day. The anniversary celebration, once filled with joy and laughter, had turned into a scene of chaos and sorrow. The news of Donald's sudden, tragic death spread quickly. He was remembered by all who knew him as the boy who had always had a joke ready, the cheeky one who brought joy to those around him. And now that same infectious spirit was gone, taken by a fate that seemed impossible for such a man to meet. But as the community mourned, a strange truth began to unfold. Donald's body, despite the visible bite marks from the snake, contained no venom. It was a baffling discovery. Eastern brown snakes were notorious for their venomous strikes, but the snake had not injected venom into Donald's body. It was a dry bite, a warning from the snake rather than an attack meant to capture prey. The coroner's report, though incomplete, hinted at something else. It seemed Donald had suffered a cardiac arrest, likely triggered by the fear and stress of the encounter, compounded by an underlying health condition. His heart, already fragile, gave out under the strain of the situation. In the end, Donald Morrison's death was not due to the venom of the eastern brown snake, but rather the sudden shock of the encounter. While he had been a victim of the snake's warning, it was his heart that failed him. The community of Kumala lost a beloved man, a friend, a jokester, a part of the fabric that held the town together. As his family grieved, they offered their gratitude to those who had tried to save him. They thanked the medical professionals and the witnesses who had rushed to his side. Donald's death was a reminder of the fragility of life, but also of the deep love he had for his hometown, a place he never left, a place that will remember him forever. But Donald's ordeal pales in comparison to the next story, Priscilla Meredith, a woman who would unknowingly walk into a life-threatening encounter with a timber rattlesnake. The bite itself was horrifying, but what happened afterward was even more shocking, leaving many in the community devastated. It was a warm, quiet afternoon on May 27, 2019 in Brunswick, Georgia, where 62-year-old Priscilla Meredith spent another peaceful day tending to her garden. Originally from West Virginia, she had made Brunswick her home for over 30 years. Known for her love of nature, Priscilla had always admired the vibrant flowers she grew around her house. Over the years, her garden became her sanctuary, a place to unwind and connect with the earth. That morning, Priscilla and her sister were collecting gardening tools and stepping stones in preparation for the coming summer. As they worked, Priscilla moved toward a spot to sit. She didn't notice the timber rattlesnake lying only a few feet away, hidden among the shrubs. Its brown banded body blended seamlessly with the surroundings, making it almost invisible. The snake, coiled and poised, lay in wait. Timber rattlesnakes, native to the eastern United States, are considered one of North America's most dangerous snakes. Growing up to 5 feet long, they can strike with remarkable speed. Their venom is potent, and though anti-venom is highly effective in saving lives, untreated bites can lead to severe damage or death. Although rattlesnakes rarely result in fatalities, they account for thousands of bites each year. In fact, 8,000 people report being bitten annually, but only a handful of those are fatal. Timber rattlesnakes, however, are not aggressive by nature and generally avoid humans, only striking when threatened. But when they do strike, the consequences can be far more devastating than anyone might expect, and Priscilla would learn that truth in the most horrific way possible. As Priscilla lowered herself to the ground to rest, she came within inches of the snake. Without warning, the rattlesnake struck with swift precision. Priscilla felt the sharp pain of the fangs sinking into her skin. The snake quickly retreated, its yellowish-brown body still visible through the shrubs. A tingling sensation spread around the bite site as Priscilla jumped back, heart pounding. Her sister acted quickly, pulling her away from the snake and assessing the injury. Though the bite didn't seem to cause immediate swelling or bruising, the damage had been done. There was a chance the bite could have been dry, as rattlesnakes sometimes strike without releasing venom. However, within moments, Priscilla began to feel the effects of venom entering her bloodstream. Nausea set in and her breathing became labored. Her vision blurred and the tingling sensation spread further from the wound. She knew immediate medical attention was crucial. Her husband Timothy rushed her to Southeast Georgia Health Systems Hospital, about 3 miles away. Upon arrival, an ER doctor examined the bite, but instead of administering antivenom, consulted with Georgia Poison Control, the standard practice in such cases. The doctor sought guidance on how best to proceed. The advice he received, however, would prove disastrous. The poison control team, upon reviewing the situation, recommended withholding antivenom since there were no visible signs of swelling or bruising around the bite. The doctor, following protocol, agreed. Though Priscilla continued to feel worsening symptoms, they were told to monitor her condition without immediate treatment. As time passed, the venom rapidly spread through her body. Priscilla's condition deteriorated further, her chest tightened and her organs began to fail. Her kidneys functioned at less than 30%, and dialysis became a daily necessity. The venom, now affecting her muscles, caused involuntary twitching known as myoclonus, which became increasingly painful. Despite these symptoms, medical staff focused on treating the effects rather than addressing the venom directly. By the time Priscilla went into cardiac arrest, her body was in critical condition. The medical team rushed into action, managing to stabilize her temporarily. She was placed into a medically induced coma and connected to a ventilator. But the damage had already been done. Her kidneys were failing and her body struggled to process the venom. Days passed, then weeks, with no improvement. Priscilla's family remained by her side, but her condition continued to worsen. Her husband Timothy was horrified at the medical staff's failure to administer the life-saving antivenom that could have prevented such suffering. It was clear to him that had the venom been treated properly, Priscilla could have survived. After several weeks of futile treatment, Priscilla passed away. The delay in receiving antivenom had ultimately been the cause of her death. The decision not to administer the medication, despite the unmistakable symptoms of envenomation, had been catastrophic. In the wake of the tragedy, Timothy filed a lawsuit against Southeast Georgia Health System's Brunswick campus, Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta, and Emory University, seeking accountability for the medical negligence that led to his wife's death. He named several doctors involved in the case, hoping to find justice for Priscilla's unnecessary suffering and death. The hospital, along with Georgia Poison Control, defended their actions, stating they had followed established protocols. Dr. Mohsen Aklahi, the medical director at Southeast Georgia Health Systems, explained that the poison control team advised against administering antivenom, citing the absence of swelling or bruising as an indication that it might not be necessary. Dr. Gaylord L., managing director at Georgia Poison Control, reiterated that antivenom is only given in about 25% of cases, often withheld until signs of envenomation are clearly present. But for Timothy, this reasoning offered no comfort. The failure to administer antivenom, despite the clear signs of a venomous bite, left him with a profound sense of loss. He couldn't comprehend how such a simple, life-saving treatment could be withheld when it was needed most. This case has left many questioning how such a basic intervention could be delayed when the stakes were so high. In an era of advanced medical care, how could something as straightforward as administering antivenom be overlooked? Was it just an error, or is there something more to it? What do you think? Could a quicker response have saved Priscilla? Share your thoughts in the comments as we move on to our next story, an account of William Martin, a seasoned herpetologist who believed his experience could save him, but a single strike proved otherwise. It was a quiet morning on August 2, 2012 at William Martin's home in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Known as Marty to those close to him, William had spent his life immersed in the study of timber rattlesnakes. At 80 years old, he was considered a leading authority in herpetology. His career, built on a deep passion for the venomous snakes of the Bull Run Mountains, had earned him respect across the scientific community. Marty had developed a fascination with snakes as a child. At just 13 years old, while exploring the Bull Run Mountains, he made a remarkable discovery: a population of timber rattlesnakes never before documented. He convinced Dr. Leslie Bearer, a professional herpetologist, to visit the area and confirm his findings. This early encounter ignited a lifelong pursuit. Despite his small stature, Marty's tenacity led him to document snake populations across the globe. In his 20s, he co-founded the Virginia Herpetological Society and earned a degree in biology from the University of South Florida after serving as a paratrooper in Vietnam. Over the years, Marty had encountered many rattlesnake bites. While some were dry, others left their mark. The pain was always searing, spreading from the bite site and weakening his body. But his resilience never faltered. He continued to handle timber rattlesnakes, pushing through the discomfort to further his research. Though rare, venomous snake bites can prove deadly, especially for the very young, the elderly, or those with weakened immune systems. Rattlesnake strikes are fast, capable of traveling 6.5 miles per hour, covering up to 3 feet in the blink of an eye. Despite his knowledge and experience, Marty's luck was about to run out. On that morning in 2012, Marty was at home as he had been countless times before, preparing to handle his pet timber rattlesnake. It was a creature he knew well, having worked with these snakes for decades. As Marty approached the enclosure, the rattlesnake let out a hiss, perhaps a warning. He didn't take it too seriously though. He was used to this routine. But before he could react, the snake lunged. The strike was so rapid that it caught him off guard. In an instant, the snake's fangs sank into his left hand, a bite that would prove to be unlike any other he had experienced. William dropped the snake back into its enclosure, his heart pounding. He quickly assessed the damage. 2 small puncture wounds were visible on his hand, with blood trickling out. He knew the feeling too well. The tingling sensation that spread up his arm was a familiar sign. This was no dry bite. The venom was already working its way into his bloodstream, and Marty knew that he needed help immediately. He called out to his wife, Gwen Miller. Although Gwen had seen similar incidents before, this one felt different. It wasn't the typical dry bite she was used to. This seemed much more serious. Without hesitation, she rushed to his side, helping him into the car, and drove straight to the nearest hospital just over 7 miles away. Marty was no stranger to life-threatening situations. He had escaped a Colombian prison, trekked through unforgiving jungles, and faced venomous snakes in remote corners of the world. But this time, what seemed like a simple bite would soon prove to be far more dangerous. As the venom spread, the pain intensified and his body began to weaken. Despite receiving prompt antivenom, the effects were unlike anything he had encountered before. His vision blurred, his chest tightened, and his breathing became labored. Doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize him, but the venom showed no mercy. By the time night fell, Marty's condition had taken a sharp turn for the worse. His family gathered around his bedside, Gwen, his daughters, and close friends, all watching in silence as the man who had dedicated his life to studying and respecting these creatures now struggled to survive against one of them. As the hours passed, his body continued to weaken. By morning, William Martin, a pioneer in herpetology, had passed away. Marty's death was a blow to the herpetological community. He had contributed greatly to the study of rattlesnakes, documenting their population numbers and observing the effects of climate change on their habitats. His groundbreaking research had shaped how scientists understood the species, and his name was respected by those in the field. He had been featured in documentaries, including one with Steve Irwin on the Crocodile Hunter series, where he shared his knowledge of timber rattlers with the world. Yet, in the end, it was a single strike from a snake he had handled countless times before that claimed his life. The news of his death rippled through the community. Tributes poured in, recounting his dedication to studying rattlesnakes, his adventurous spirit, and his refusal to let age slow him down. Even those who had never met him felt the loss, as his contributions had shaped their own work.